All right, let's make sure you guys can hear me here. Other day I started streaming for a few minutes and nobody could hear me because my microphone wasn't set up right. All right, what are we doing today, guys? We are working on. Actually, I'm just messing around today, so I'm gonna build some labs. I'm gonna play me some Brotato, just because I think it's funny, and I'm gonna build some labs while we're going. And yeah, that's what I'm working on. So if anybody wants to hang out with me, you guys are welcome to. Obviously, I got to build labs 5 and 6, and then I also need to build. I'm going to do a review lab each of the two every 4 weeks for the 16-week course, and then we're going to use those as review and also probably some troubleshooting. So, because the last 2 weeks of the course are troubleshooting and testing, so we're going to do some troubleshooting of automations and testing. We are in this week, so this is the one that we actually just finished yesterday. However, I should have read my notes. This is the one that I built. So I built Unit 8, so we're going to be a little out of order, but I'll go ahead and fix that and get that all plugged back in right. But we'll get that going. But again, I'm not working super hard today, so if anybody's got questions, let me know. Leave that up over here for people that want to see what the course is about and what we've been doing. But I'm also sitting around playing Brotato a little bit today. I've finished all the characters, so when I play, I'm just really just wasting time. So, you know, it's not like I don't have anybody to finish that's not on level 5 already. Or, you know, beat on the difficulty level 5, which is the highest difficulty. So, let's play Multitasker. We'll do a little Multitasker game. So, if you guys have questions about Linux, systems engineering, any of the stuff that we do in Prolog, let me know. Yeah, it's annoying. I forget how slow this gun is to shoot at first, so it's hard to line up early on. Because normally you can kill 2 guys with 1 shot. Frustrating.
In one fell swoop.
In one fell swoop, yes. Also, my wife's sitting over there playing her game, so she's doing that for a little bit. So you may hear her talking over there a little bit. I guess if you guys have questions for the senior help desk person in the room, you can ask her those too. Ask her what the help desk position's like. Taking calls from users and resetting passwords and doing Active Directory stuff. All stuff that we don't do around here. We don't do that here. I'll take that bullet, that's fine. But yeah, if you guys have questions, oh, almost died there. Let me know. I am just playing video games and hanging out and not working too hard. If I can avoid it. Take some range damage here. That. Yeah, we'll save our money. I haven't played in this zone for a while, so I'm playing a different type of Brotato than I'm used to playing. I normally play in the Abyss now. I do one of these days have to sit down and build out our Prometheus environment. I set that up like a month ago, and I haven't done anything else with it since the initial setup, so I do have to get in there and get that all going soon. But we'll have to figure that out. Alright, we want to kill this little guy if we can. Nope, didn't get to him. He gives us treasure. Still nothing. Alright. We'll do some lab building here in a minute. I'm just going to play rounds of Brotato in between. Also, it's kind of warm here. Like it's very cool in Phoenix, so my AC's not turning on in my house. So I'm like kind of warming up sitting inside. Because normally it's super hot outside, so the AC kicks on all day. But But don't worry, for you eco-friendly people, I have a pretty big solar collector on the roof, so I don't really actually use hardly any electricity. Actually, most of the time I feed back to the grid all day. So, all right. Let's do something. We'll get back to, man, we'll get back to that. Get back to some Brotato here in a second. All right, so I got to make more labs up. When we make labs, we are saving this to Killer Coda. Well, we're saving it to GitHub, and then GitHub has actions that run into Killer Coda. So I'll show you guys what that kind of looks like for people that aren't super familiar. So I'm working on, where'd that go? Working here on Killer Coda. And let's go to our creator setup. And we're in Prolog Labs here. So at Tanis. And we've got what, Ansible Automation, HashiCorp Labs, Kubernetes Labs, and Linux Labs. So those all show up here. And then we want to do an automation lab. And we want to make a lab that's going to show up in here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 7. So we got to make the labs that are in between these labs, right? That's kind of the goal of what we're working on for today. So to do that, I got to go to Automation Labs here. And there's Lab 5 to make. So we can, you know, just copy one of these and make it into Lab 5 and then go build all the Lab 5 stuff. Or we could build the review lab for units 1 through 4. Let's do it this way. We got to change. We really need to make this Kubernetes 1 Lab 8. So I do need to change that here in a little bit, but we don't need to do that yet. Let's just copy this, drop it in here, and then we're just going to rename it. Let's do Unit 5. Do Unit 5 next, because I have all the stuff for Unit 5. And Unit 5 is specifically what type of lab? Let's go find that. What did I make us do for the worksheet? Let's go look at the worksheet here. Variables. So it's variables and variable precedence for people that weren't around for it. And we want to add variables. I have a bunch of different labs that I had kind of already built and a bunch of things that we kind of want to practice and walk through when we do the actual lab. And these were some of the other labs that I had built that are kind of on the same topic. And this is like the digging deeper section. So we got to basically add these things in there. So we're going to go rename this again. Underscore, and we'll call this variables. That's fair. Unit 5 variables. That's fine. All right. So now when we do that, we have to add that in the sort order because that won't actually show up in Killer Coda. What we just did, this doesn't automatically show up over here. We have to tell it to show up. Back in the day when they first, like 3 years ago when I started building stuff out in Killer Coda, it would just automatically pick up all your folders and it would go build them as long as inside of there was a properly formatted index.json. As long as this was here, it would all work. Now, though, they made it so that you have to control the structure, and now you have to have the structure.json. So for this to work, what we just did, we have to come in here, we have to grab something like this, and we have to add it back. Yep. That's funny that thing wants to call it cloud provisioning, but no. This thing's always trying to fix things for us, right? We don't want that. We want unit 5 underscore variables. And when we do that, nope, get out of there. Now that will properly show up when we do a push. So we're not going to do a push yet, right? We've got all our source control here, and this could get committed up. And when it gets committed up, it would immediately show up right here. You'll see that my last git sync was yesterday because I was building lab 7 out, right? So we can actually watch that trigger when we do push this up here in a little bit, but we're not going to do that yet. We're actually going to build out our lab first before we go doing any of that weird stuff. So here in the lab, we got to fix probably the intro. So welcome to Prolog Automation. That's fine. The setup, we're going to install Ansible, and Nmap is fine. Sure, we can have all that stuff. This will make the scenario wait until that install is done, because if you look right here at the setup, it'll do the install, and then it'll touch temp finished. So the file temp finished will show up. And until that file shows up, the foreground will just be sitting there spinning, right? Saying, wait. So it's just going to sit here and say installing the scenario, and it's going to wait here without a prompt until temp finished exists. That's what that does, right? Until the file temp finished is there. So while temp finished is not there, is what that's saying, as a file, in fact, then it's going to sleep and sit there. So it just makes the thing sit there until the setup is done. You can Control C and stop it, but like we don't need to do that. All right, so let's go fix the index.json and say automation lab unit 5. And this one's going to be, whoops. This one's going to be variables. And then it's going to be execute your automation tools to utilize variables, right? And one of the focuses when we were talking about this, right? Let me pull up. I'll pull up the talk from that day. Even though we're now much past this unit, I'm going to show you guys kind of what we were talking about that day, so you guys can see. Get 7 out of the way. Move 5 up so you guys can actually see. Okay. We're not going to talk through it right now. This is recorded up on YouTube if anybody wants it. But I just want you guys to see that this is the general idea of what we were talking about. We were in Unit 5. Yeah. So in Unit 5, we were talking about where we load variables into our tool. And when can we load variables? Well, before execution, we can have inventories and custom variables stamped out on machines. During execution, you can feed in environment files, extra variables. There's all kinds of variable precedents and ways to get variables into your automation. And then when you're done, you can take those and you can feed them out to logs, and you can write them out with Jinja templates to Discord and all kinds of stuff. In fact, we have an automation that runs in our Discord. We can go right here, right? Discord's popping. There's a lot of people talking in there today. But if you go to like our Sandbox channel, you can see my little automation that runs every morning. So this was this morning. Actually, funny enough, this was... my date's wrong? Oh. This is today. And then this is like the lab information that I want to know. All the systems are up, there's nothing unreachable, and there's no reboots. And the other day we had a system down, and when the system was down, you could see that it was down. Oh, our system rebooted. When the system was down, you could see it very clearly. Where is he at? One of our boxes was down the other day. It was super easy to see. Could have sworn it was just the other day. Anyways, when it's clean, right? There's no anything to look at. I swear one of the boxes was down the other day, though. Doesn't matter. But anyways, that's the general workflow. And then what can you do with variables? Where do we load variables? What's the precedence of variables? What does it mean to look at a variable in Ansible, right? Here's our inventories, things from the other ones. And then we can read them out of API. So we can do API calls and then pull information in. It's a very valuable kind of skill to have. In this case, we're reading it out of a tool called Vault. And we're just reading... well, first we go in and we log in with a username and credential. We get back a token, and then we present that token around in the system to read variables that we need for our playbooks. Super straightforward thing once you've done it. It looks complex at first, but once you say, okay, well, all I did was supply some credentials, get back a value, then I ran around with that little token, kind of like a kid at a carnival. That's actually the way that they teach Kerberos back in the old Kerberos days. They called it the Kerberos Carnival. The kid has a little ticket, and he's running around going to all the different things at the carnival, all the different, things that the ticket would get him in. Well, that's exactly how it is in a system. Your system checks out a token. This actually happens in Active Directory, too. Your system checks out a token, and then it uses those credentials to go run around to get resources in your systems. This is, we're doing Linux here, but it's the same in Windows world. It's the same with Active Directory. And that's one of the reasons why, a user's doing something in any type of system, and then you make a change to their permissions, and then you tell them to log back out and log back in, or reset a system. Almost universally, it's because it has to go recheck out that token. And that's an easier thing than telling them, okay, go to PowerShell or go to this and delete this file and regenerate token. It's much easier to just say reboot the effing system, log your user out and log back in. That's an easier thing for like help desk, right? And that's where my wife works. Like, she's not going to be telling people how to do that stuff. She's going to tell them to log out and log back in when she makes changes. So anyways, and then there's precedents. These are all the precedents, 22 of them, in fact, in Ansible for where variables get loaded. And then we talked about like a precedence challenge, like which one of these is going to win precedence. And we talked about that. So we're not going over that right now, custom facts and things that the servers can bring with them. That's all recorded. You guys can see that if you want. That's all up there. But so what are we going to do in this lab then? That's the question, right? I'm going to make them do some variable stuff. I need to go back and look at my notes and say, well, what did I show them that week? Like, what did we do? Well, we loaded variables into the system. That's what we were just talking about, loading variables up, using the variables and registering them, and then putting them somewhere when we're done. So what I might say for this one is that's digging deeper. These are actual playbooks that I had them going and doing. So maybe loading variables into Ansible, and then maybe registering and using variables. That might be fun during execution. And then maybe, stamping variables. Stamping variables with, let's say with Jinja 2 templates. Loading variables in Ansible. That could be a good setup. That could be a good start there. And then down here, here's our loaded assets, right? We have all these assets that kind of come with us. And there's a bunch of assets that aren't needed now that we're in like these later labs. So I really should clean some of these up and then pull them out of here, because these are just files that are loaded into the system, right? And then also whether they're executable or not, based on if they're like a shell script or a Python script. Because in some of the early labs, I had you guys using shell and Python. And then in kind of these later labs, as the course has progressed, we're focusing mostly on Ansible. I may go back and redo the course in the future where I put the bash and the Python stuff more in there. But I do kind of use Ansible for everything, so it makes a little more sense for me to show you guys Ansible. Although all of these other things have some value. I mean, there's a lot of ways. There's an old saying in Perl, Tim Towdy. It's a name, but there is more than one way to do it. Tim Towdy becomes there's more than one way to do it. And that's just an old, so if you guys ever see that like in old forums or something, and somebody just like tells somebody Tim Towdy, that's what he's saying, is there's more than one way to do it. And it's Towdi, Tim Towdy. And it's there's more than one way to do it. So in case you guys have never heard that, it's basically like it's almost the same as like your mileage may vary. You could do it other ways. I mean, people come in here all the time and are like, I use Arch Linux, and I'm like, fine with me. I don't care what Linux you use. Professionally, you're not going to use Arch Linux, but I mean, I don't care what Linux you use as a hobbyist. Do whatever you want, right? But professionally, you're probably going to use one of the professional styles of Linux that all the companies out there use. And the goal, of our professional Linux users group is to get you guys doing stuff professionally, so we focus on that. Atticus over on the YouTube side, how's it going? Yeah, I need to record 6 and 7 still. And then now, since I accidentally did 8, I'm just going to probably record 6, 7, and 8 here in the next week or so. And then we'll be all caught up on the automation stuff. But I feel like I've put out enough work for the people that are doing the course that, if you guys are doing the course with us, which is free up in our Discord, there's all the stuff is here for you guys to focus on. So like the automation unit 7 stuff is up. Although admittedly I did jack it up. I didn't mean to, but I put the wrong. I went to, where's that at? Hold on. I swear I just clicked on it. Yeah. I accidentally did Unit 8, so automating K8's environments. That's what we were doing this week. So we'll get back to that though. Right now we're building out variables, so we're doing variable stuff right now in Ansible, and I'm just kind of taking my time and talking through it because I'm lazy. But loading variables in Ansible, let's go look at that a little bit. Let's close this down. So the first step, and then, we got to fix a couple other things. Then we got to fix the finish. Look at you learning Ansible. You executed different administrative, you executed different playbooks and utilize to load and utilize variables in your automation tools. Ansible. In this case, it's Ansible. So, yeah, I agree, Atticus. There's a lot of stuff going on. Lots of stuff going on, and I need to get working on my dissertation, but I'm just being obstinate, insubordinate, and churlish. That's what I'm being. Verify. Our verify is going to be different on this one. Let's do bin true for now. But let's see if there's anything else here that we need to do. We've cleaned all this up. We've done all this. We may add in and change some of these. But I think for now, we're probably good on that. All right, so let's go here. Let's get our structure.json saved so that we have unit 5 variables done. Unit 5 variables, good. And let's go fix our lab. So this lab is designed as part of a larger set of instruction that is free from the professional Linux users group. That's all true. That's not changing. Your deployment team have recently created a website. Nope, we don't want to do that. We're going to say your deployment teams have been looking for ways to deploy different environments. You know that your Ansible playbooks are static and need to be able to have or need to be reused for different environments. You decide to research the use of variables in Ansible, because that's what you're going to be doing here, is like looking at how Ansible loads stuff, how you can feed, like, and I always tell people, like, it seems silly, but it's like looking at one of those old ad libs or mad libs, if you guys remember those, where your friend would have a book and then there would be like, give me a noun, give me a place, give me a thing, give me a proper name, give me a verb, give me an adjective, and you're like, what the heck's an adjective, right? And then so you're sitting there trying to fill out this thing, and then it tells some funny story. Well, it's kind of the same thing here. Like, we're going to have these placeholders for looking up information for the system, right? That's what a variable is. And some of you probably code and program and you use variables all the time, but for people on the system side of the world, maybe they've never done this inside of a tool like Ansible, so we gotta figure out how to do that. So this was for the other lab, so we could pull the expected state out. And we might say your goals for this will be examine your examine variable use in Ansible. Use setup to see collected variables about target servers in an environment. Use or I'd say maybe what's another thing that we could do there as part of the general idea that we are looking at loading variables? To examine variable use setup environment, and maybe load variables from different sources into your playbook. Something like that, right? Seems pretty simple. And then we're going to go down here and we'll generate. And what I've been doing in some of these labs is sometimes I add the asset in, but then sometimes I also, and this is what I've been kind of doing more recently, is I've just been putting the playbook in here for you then to copy or write out. And I think that I don't know which one's better, but I think that like getting it in there correctly and making sure that it loads right and does all the things that it needs to is probably of some value to people. So let's go ahead and we're gonna go steal from ourselves over here, because I know over here I have one of these. Let's just grab this first little part here. Plain, yep. So we're gonna say create a playbook that what do we want to do here? I think I have it in one of these other ones. Let me see. That's not a bad one for debugging, but I don't need that. Let's think about this. Gotta think of how we want to do this, and I think I have examples somewhere already written. I thought I did anyways. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. If I already wrote it or not, I guess it doesn't really matter. Yeah, I didn't write it. All right, I don't care. We don't really need it. Let's say just shows a username and password, right? So just create a playbook that shows a username and password. And that playbook might look something like this. And this would be debug. And then var. My whole system just crashed. You guys still with me? Hopefully you guys are with me. I guess we could do this as, I don't normally do this as message like this, but let's see. This is username and their password is, whoops. And it doesn't actually matter if you have spaces or not. Some people prefer the spaces, some people don't. I am not a purist, as far as if you have spaces around the variable or not. I'm not a purist in that sense. I'm not really super concerned with how that looks for people. And then we'll say from this, execute this playbook. To see it run, right? And to run that playbook will be Ansible playbook Oh, okay, shows username and password. VI, let's just say user. That's fine. And then playbook user.yaml. Right? And if you do that, right, if you were to do this set of steps here, let's just go, we go to any of these labs here, and it won't really matter. Let's just test this as we go. Yeah, anybody wondering, it does take a long time to build labs. And I'm not like working super hard at it or nothing, but it does take a while to walk through and like make all these things right. Although, interestingly enough, that's fine. So this is running that backgrounding script, right? So it's doing the install in the background of all the things that it needs. And then when it's done, the scenario will be ready to go. We're not using the scenario for anything other than a sandbox right now, so it's not that big of a deal. If anybody wants to do the actual lab from yesterday and ask me questions, here it is. I'll drop it in chat for you guys. I don't know, people that were around yesterday for the labs, they actually got to do that with me when we were doing our meeting. I don't normally use debug with message. I normally use variable. So if we needed to debug, we can go make sure that I'm using it correctly. Oh, and I guess I could write out the whole Ansible. Yeah, you know, message system, something has that. Yeah, so they have that. I put double quotes around it, but let's see what this looks like. There we go. Let's grab all this. Make sure our playbook. Password is password. All right. Now this is going to break, but we expect it to break. We expect it to break. Oh, that's annoying. But we expect it to break because there's no variable. So if we give it a variable for username equals Scott and password equals test, right? Or let's say secure. Now that will print out, right? Username is Scott and their password is secure. So we could use that and say, let's see it run. If this broke, why didn't it break? Can you add the user right? So do them as extra variables at the command line, and we pass in. Now, would you ever normally do that? Oh, please don't, right? Don't actually add passwords in that way. But what other ways could we get usernames and passwords in there? Well, we could pass them in all kinds of ways, right? In fact, all the ways that we can pass them in are right here. So, people that are interested in passing in a bunch of variables, you can do them all these ways. In fact, this was the 22nd. This is the highest precedence. We gave the username and password at the command line as an extra var. You can use -e, but I like to use -extra-vars. I like to be like verbose about it. And the reason I like to do that is just because then if I ever give that to like another engineer as like a set of instructions, it's very clear what they're giving. So if there's any problems, they could tweak or figure out whatever's going on, right? -e, you know, I don't know, maybe they got to go look it up and figure it out. I don't know. But the other ways that we can hand it in are, there's all kinds of ways, but we can give variables. The ones that I use the most probably are vars files. So we could give a vars files and then give a file, which is in YAML, and that file can be read for those users and for that information, and we could drop that in there. Most of the time, I do that through a tool called Vault. So Ansible Vault will secure that for us. I've never tried to do it without Vault, but I guess I could. Let's just see. Could we VI? Let's just VI. I don't know, user. What would do this? So let's just do. I don't know, info. I'm terrible with naming .yaml. And in info.yaml, we'll just say username is Scott and password is secure. Right? And then we have to modify this file a little bit. If we're going to do that, we have to modify this user.yaml. And down here, we could also give vars right here technically, right? But I can say vars files, and then in vars files, I can give info.yaml, right? And I normally always do this as a, I'm actually curious if this is going to work or not, because I always give that as a vault. But let's see if this runs. Username, Scott. Ansible parser. Okay, so now variable files must contain either dictionary of variables or a list of dictionaries. Okay, got username, Scott, password secure. Now that may have been, normally we don't, may have just been my fault. Username, Scott. Well, we shouldn't need to do it this way, but we can try it. Normally you do it in YAML, but let's give it a try. Just to, oops. Try just look. Yeah. Oh, you don't. Hold on. We definitely want this, but let's try this. Just for fun. Nope. Huh. It's interesting. I've never tried to pass it like that. Vars files info.yaml. All right. Fair enough. We'll do it a different way. Right. So we will do Ansible Vault create info.yaml. And then we'll give it a vault password 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? And then in here we say username Scott and password secure. Right? And then now if we do this, when we run the playbook here, we need to do an ask vault pass. Ask pass vault. I always get that backwards. It'll read the vault. No. What's going on there? That's for sure the way we normally do that. That's weird. Why is that, hold on. Strange. That's super weird. I've never seen that have a problem before. So, why is it not able to... Gotta figure out why that's not pulling that apart correctly. And I know I have that in one of my other... Let me go see. Ah, hold on. It's in HashiCorp. typically when I add vault, nope, step 4. It better not be that fucking space. It is that space. Damn it. It's annoying. But, I mean, it is my fault. You need a space. Dumb. Dumb, dumb, dumb. I don't think I even need that anymore. Alright, let's try this again. Now it'll read them. That's dumb. Alright. And then I could also... Now we don't even need anyone. That was being dumb. We don't even need the vault anymore. Yeah, I didn't think we needed the vault, so that's funny. I just didn't have a space in there. Just so used to writing. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So let's get rid of this. Don't need that. So then the question would be, if it broke, why? Add the vault as extra vars at the command line. So we did that. And then the next thing would be create a file, create an Ansible, or create a variable. So this would be an environment file named info.yaml, and add the variables there. And that might look like something like this. info.yaml, and then in there it's just silliness. Here. And now modify. You got to modify your user. So now your variable, this here, becomes right. And now it'll read okay. Now we run it, right, as just without the basketball pass. Run the playbook. Run the playbook. See the execution, or see the file read. Right. So now the question then, so this is the next question is, read, so I would say read about variable precedence here, because variable precedence starts to come into play, because now excuse me, variable precedence right here. And I think we can do it like this. Right, and then it'll just be, you know, we can just say and that'll just be linked right there, right? That's a little markdown. And then what do you expect outcome to be if you execute this? So we come back up here, we grab this, and we say, if we were to execute this, and the username is not Scott, thank you, wifey, and the password is not secure, which do you think that it would take? So we've got the value set up so Ansible is going to run this and it's reading it from that file. But what if I do that command from earlier and I say not Scott and not secure? This is, you guys didn't see me modify the playbook in any way, did you? No. So which one of these is going to take, what's going to take precedence, the command line or what's in the file? Well, which one is this in line with what you expected from variable precedence? Right? And the answer to that, let's go look real quick. So we have a vars file right here in the play. So as the play is executed, we have a vars underscore files being read in as info.yaml. You guys saw that. It's got Scott and secure. Originally, we also had Scott and secure being passed in as extra vars right here. So there was no conflict, right? You didn't need to put them in both places. We never did. But now we put not Scott and not secure down here as an extra var. Well, this has the highest precedence, always wins precedence, and we just proved that to ourselves, right? So this comes from that link that I showed. So that link that I dropped in the lab, when the lab comes live, you would go to that link, and then it would drop you over, and you would see this right here. Where's it at? You would see invariable precedence right here. If we were to go to this, if anybody wants it, I can link it too. But this is the variable precedence for Ansible right here, directly from their docs. And I would expect that the play vars files right here that I have set as Scott and secure would be overridden by not Scott and not secure. That is the behavior I would expect. Now, the other thing that I tell you guys, and we talked about this when we did the course, so if you go look at the recording, you'll see this. You don't have to use all 22 of these. Like, for every playbook you ever write for your whole career, there is no rule. Like, nobody's going to come along and go, you don't have all 22 of those. Get the fuck out of here. You're fired. That doesn't make any sense. You only need the ones you need. And in my career, I use like 3 of these. I use inventory files to pass in variables about servers. Then vars files sometimes if I need to read stuff out of a vault that like maybe a user gives me, or a file that is there as an environment file, which we just did, or I pass things in at the command line. Those are the 3 things I do. So I really just need to keep track of 3, 14, and 22 as far as precedence goes. So then let's go, we're going to go set some values in here, and we're going to give some default values, right? So if nothing is given, let's see if we can get that to work. Right, so let's vi our info.yaml. Did I fix, so this one has that variable. Run the playbook and see if it reads the variables. Good. Read about variable precedence here. Wait, did the variables you expect come out with having been read from info.yaml? Did you see what you expected? And the answer to that's yes, right? That worked. Yep. All those things worked. Was variable printed out? Is this in line with what you expected from variable precedence? Yes. Let's look at the assets are here, and the assets are going to be passed in, so hosts will be here. So control plane and node 01. So let's read in some variables. So we'll switch gears a little bit. Switching gears a little here. Let's look at the variables Ansible can read about servers with gather facts. Right, so gather underscore facts. And I believe we already have that. Yeah, gather facts is already set to true. So let's just see what kind of information about our servers we can see, right? So the way that we'll see that is we're going to run a different playbook. We're not even going to run a playbook. We're just going to say Ansible, just run a normal Ansible command. And we're going to use servers, because I believe servers was the name in the host file here. Yep. And then the host file we know from down here is being loaded in answers, right? So hosts, where's hosts at? Is being, oh, it's being actually dropped in root. So host should be in root on this one. So then we go to Ansible servers -i root hosts. So we're reading that host file, looking at the servers -m setup. And if that all happens, so I'm going to just right here, let's say sh node 01 real quick. Yep. Okay. So I'm just going to make that file. So root hosts real quick. Oh, it's already there for this lab. Good. So then I say Ansible servers -i. So use this inventory file root hosts -m setup. And when we do this, it's going to dump like 16 pages to the screen for each server. It's a tremendous amount of information that Ansible knows about the servers. What does Ansible know about the different servers? So filter down to just OS information, right? So maybe we want to filter that command down a little bit, and that's going to look like this, because that's too much information, right? So then we say -a and filter is going to give us there's a term for this. It's not quite regex filtering. It's there's a name for it. It's the same type of filtering that ls uses at the command line, like if you use wildcard. It's general wildcard filtering, but I'm gonna say Ansible _OS asterisk. So everything I want everything about the OS that Ansible knows, following the Ansible OS path. And in this case, it found Ansible OS family and told us about Debian. And I said, well, maybe there's more. And by the way, you can come up here and you can look for any of them as well. So here was OS family, right? And I said, no, that wasn't exactly what I wanted. I wanted something that looked more like, right? So sometimes you got to go look through the info first. And you say, maybe I wanted something like Ansible environment. That's gonna tell me the environment that Ansible has, kind of like its shell. That's useful. Maybe if I'm trying to execute something and need to see paths or something. No, none of these things are super interesting. Oh, distribution. So Ansible _distribution asterisk should give me all this tasty stuff, right? I'm always joking around about tasty data, but I want to get my hands on the data, right? So I want something like this. Distribution asterisk. And that should give me for both the servers. That's much more like what I wanted. Now, could I go directly down to the full thing and only see any one thing? Yeah, absolutely. You can filter this down as granular as you want. But I might take this for now and say this is a good one for us, and say filter down to just distribution information. And then I might say something like in the lab, what does Ansible know about the version of the server? Can you find the kernel information? All right, and I think most of you probably could, but it would probably be something like Ansible _kernel. It is, but let's just say I didn't know that and I could go try to find it. There we go. And then from there, right, so I might grab that. And any of you guys that have done my labs know that I am not in the business of like tricking you or tripping you up or being like, ha ha ha, you don't know all the things that I know. That's not the point of it. The point is, like, I really do think, as with almost all things when you're dealing with engineers, if you can just see it work one time, then you're like, well, I don't even want to listen to this guy anymore. Once I could see the system and once I knew that I could filter down, I could go do any of those things. Yeah. And once you see how to use variables with like when conditions, because Ansible's not a full like the Ansible framework around how we do tasks is not a full programming language. We have when conditions, and we can do pretty robust oring and anding and like basic logic gating type stuff, but it's not a full programming language. So we don't have like traditionally powerful, if conditions, but we have when conditions, and when will test a lot of these things. And I can say when Ansible underscore OS family is equal to Debian, or I can search for the string Debian if I want, but I can say it's equals to exactly Debian as a string. So there's different ways. So basically I can look for like substrings of things. Like if I knew I wanted in boot image 6.8, I can look for that string 6.8 in that. So because you can use any Python filter you want, right? It's very powerful in that respect. But anyways, you can look for if there's enough processors. You're trying to make something into a web server, and if it has less than 2 cores, you don't really want it because you're doing a load balancer, so you need to have a lot of cores. So I don't know, maybe you have a minimum number of cores. You can check all kinds of things. There's all kinds of tests, all the normal types of testing. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Yeah, sorry, the wife was taking my truck, so it's fine. Don't mind if she takes my truck. Yeah, look, versions, right? If you need to know what version of Python you're using, here's all this information. And by the way, this hierarchy is all JSON, right? It's a JSON output, or JSON, I don't care how you say it. But it's Ansible underscore Python dot version dot major would resolve to 3 if we were doing like a debug. And we could, by the way, we could test that. We could say, could we find Ansible underscore Python dot version dot major 3, and we could go write that into the lab if we wanted to, right? We can go modify that and put that into our things and debug those out. But that's not really, that's not super necessary for right now. So what have we done in the lab? We've done some basic variable stuff. We pulled it in from a file. We could have used Vault, but I don't want to get into all the Vault stuff this early. It's not really, it overcomplicates things for people. Plus, I have other labs that deal with Vault. So those labs are already written. This is like, our automation course is less about being an expert, I want to say, in the individual tools, and more about like where you use these things. Because like even the last few weeks, we've been using Packer and Aptainer, which are not tools that I normally use, but they're tools that are valuable for that specific thing that they're needed for. Anyway, so we got that part done. Step 1 done. Let's go look at this. All right, let's hit Control S on that. Wait, okay, so what version? About the kernel is shown. Are the 2 systems that you're using this lab the same? Why or why not? All right, so that was our first one. And what kind of test would we want to do to make sure that this had been done? Let's maybe just, here's how we could do this. Did I make you guys make the file in here? Where's that? Hold on. Our check will just be this. We will grep the word pass from info.yaml. So our verification for this will be grep pass from root info.yaml. So how do we know that you did the lab? If pass shows up in root info.yaml, that means that you at least did that part. And that's enough for me. Like I don't make our labs super difficult to like figure out how to get through them or whatever, because you never see the verify step. It's just when you hit this button here to go forward in the lab. If you don't have whatever it is done, your validation will fail. Well, I don't want that to be super hard for people, but they do have to at least have done the lab to move forward, right? So that's step 1. Step 2, we need to put together, what's this next part going to look like? The next part is going to be, go back to our index.json. we're going to say registering and using variables during execution. So how do we want to register and use variables? Let's do some pretty simple stuff. You have examined the basic variable loading into Ansible. Now you want to execute some you want to so now you've examined the basic variables loading into Ansible. You want to collect variables during execution and make decisions based on those variables. Right? Oh, by the way, guys, some of you were around earlier. I'm also sitting around playing a game of Brotato while we're hanging out here. So I do have a game in the background here that I'll probably go back to eventually here. And, you know, I've been talking for over an hour, and surprisingly, nobody on Twitch has said anything. So that's interesting. I don't know if I have, like, comments turned off over there or something, but that's kind of funny to me. So you want to examine, or you have examined the basic variable loading into Ansible. Basic loading, let's say the basic loading of variables into Ansible. Smitty number 1, I do not use Linux desktop, no. I run Windows at home, but I don't run Linux desktop, no. In fact, I would tell you, you're probably not going to get a lot of professional usage out of Linux desktop, because I can't think of many companies that run Linux as a desktop. So just so you know. Grid Square just got here trying to act like I'm getting my phone. Yeah, no, you're welcome to hang out. Sometimes I seem like I'm super serious, and I guess sometimes I am pretty serious, but for the most part, I try to keep it light around here. New World Andy, how's it going? But no, I appreciate you guys. Hey, lurking is the backbone of Twitch, man. People just hanging out, keeping your numbers above 0 is always good. So yeah, no, I was just noting that, like, normally somebody's talked in the first hour, but I did drop right into this. I did kind of go a little hard. And for anybody, real quick, I'll back up for a second. If you say, what the heck's this guy doing? There are labs out in Killer Coda. All this stuff over here is, like, free to use. Killer Coda gives you one scenario. Basically every hour you can use one scenario. Well, you could use multiple scenarios in the same hour, but you can only have one at a time, and you can have it for up to an hour. So their free environment has, guys, I mean, don't even, like, not even me, there are so many other people out there that are teaching you how to do stuff for free. I really think, like, Killer Coda is one of the best things on the web, especially when people tell me, like, hey, Scott, I want to do Linux, but I can't run a desktop at home. I can't run WSL. I don't have the extra resources. I say, well, you're on a Twitch stream, so you can at least go get a browser. They don't charge you nothing, and I mean, that's the best part of free. But it's when you go into it, it's federated with Google. So, like, if you have Google and you go to, like, Khan Academy or something, you know how they'll say, hey, just log in with your Google? It's the same type of thing. You just log right in. And people are teaching in Linux. My stuff is the Ansible. My stuff is also HashiCorp, and then I've got a bunch of my Linux stuff. Some of you guys, if you guys don't know how to do that, I think it's labs over on the Twitch side. There's all of our labs, my stuff and Fisherman's stuff. If you've never seen Fisherman's stuff, his labs are really good. He does labs that kind of, he hasn't made any in a while, but he focuses on, like, junior sysadmin stuff. So, like, if you were like a sysadmin, where is the work going to come from? What are the, you know, that kind of stuff. So you're working through HTTP Hack the Box. I've never played with Hack the Box. I've seen them kind of grow up recently in the last 5 years or so as kind of this popular thing. My focus for people has always been, like, enterprise Linux, getting people into doing Linux admin and Linux engineering type tasks. We have, again, our Discord's got all kinds of free stuff, but we have, you know, all the old courses and stuff We have course books that are free, right? I think these have been deprecated. I think we're moving over where the books are at. So like here's the old books and the labs, and like here's what the courses look like and stuff. And again, they're all free and they teach you how to go do all this stuff, right? And that's kind of that's what we do around here. Also, we do a lot of messing around, which is perfectly fine, right? We got off-topic channels. Look, I haven't even been in here in like an hour, and there's all kinds of people talking about all kinds of other stuff. I think there's about 40. I think we're at about 4,300 right now, if that's right, almost 4,400. But anyways, and people ask me often same stuff as that grid, where they'll say, "Well, will this help me get my Red Hat cert, or will this help me get my LFCS?" And strictly speaking, no, this won't directly help you with any of that stuff. But if you're just like, hey, I want to learn Linux better, I maybe want to be in a Linux adjacent role, and I know I need to go touch this stuff more, that's a lot of what we do around here. And you know, on my desktop, I do run Windows, but I literally live at the command line all day. So people that haven't been around for like my home lab stuff, I literally do. This is all I do is Linux all day, right, at a command line. So the fact that I have to do stuff for productivity outside of Linux doesn't bug me one bit, right? Like and this kind of stuff, like setting this up. We could do this down in VI, but it's a little easier for other people to see, especially what I'm doing here as far as the labs that we're building and that kind of stuff. So yeah. But this won't directly help you with any of that. This is just like being close to, you know, systems and close to Linux. I mean, I could show you guys, for some of you guys, if you haven't been around, I have my old presentation stuff. You know, sometimes, I mean, we go through all kinds of different stuff here sometimes, right? We've got all kinds of different, you know, old topics that I've talked on. And, you know, if you want to learn Linux with the Socratic method, which is like asking yourself questions and that kind of stuff. If you want to learn, I mean, I teach people cybersecurity. I teach all kinds of stuff at the college. So, like, if you want to know how compute and data security works, you know, something like this. This is an old, this is an old talk that I did here. Get rid of that. This is an old talk I did on, you know, compute and data security, and it's like, what's the overview? How does these things work? What are these different topics? How do we protect it? How does defense in depth work? What is security, encryption types, technique? Like, I talk through all of this stuff, right? So anyways, the point is, I try to get people into doing this stuff professionally. We're doing hands-on right now with an automation tool called Ansible. For anybody that's, you know, not super familiar with what's going on and like, oh, what the hell? I'm building labs right now for that. And did I kill my? I did kill my environment. Well, that's fine. Let's. I can also put this in dark mode. Sometimes people like dark mode a little better. So, you know, it's not as bright for everybody. But I was down here, and we're building Unit 5 and dealing with variables right now. So, step 1. One of the things I like to do, because I'm a little neurotic, is I go and I check all my stuff. But then also when we publish this, because this hasn't been pushed to GitHub yet, when this gets pushed to GitHub, it'll automatically get put over here as a new lab. But I like to, I kind of neurotically check everything. So we're going to make sure that everything looks good for now. And then when we actually execute it, if I see any typos, then we'll have to redo it. We'll have to redo each of the parts. But we're looking at servers. We did all that stuff. Okay, so I feel pretty okay about that one. Let's go to this next one. You've examined the basic loading of variables into Ansible. Now you want to collect variables during execution and make decisions based on those variables. Okay. So let's verify. So check the uptime of the system and register. Check the uptime of the system with a shell command. Register the variable and then debug it to the screen. This is what we're going to do. So let's come back over here. Let's grab our little block, because, you know, we like to steal things from ourselves. Boom, right here. And let's go away. And then for this one, we're going to drop this here and get rid of this. And we're just gonna call this vi uptime.yaml or uptime check.yaml. It doesn't really matter. Although the longer we make it, the longer the rest of everything is going to be. Look facts true. And then our name, we're going to have, there's arbitrary names, guys, that you can do with things. And then we'll go from there. Oh, Grid Square, cool. I'm at 56 going 57 and seriously doubt if I had any sort of certs, I would be something like nice to try. You're too old, but that's fine. Side hustles are a good thing. I can tell you this, Grid. I'm 44, and I am still a young man in most Linux Unix circles. Like when I work with the guy, because I work at I work for a company called Redline, but then I'm contracted to NOAA, which is the National Oceanographic Atmospheric Agency, NOAA, right? But I also I get dropped in on all kinds of other projects doing high performance compute. And I've been doing that. I've been doing Linux for about 22 years professionally or so. And where I'm going with that is in the circles that I run in high performance compute, I assure you 56, 57 is not old. I work with guys who, now, the guys I know have been doing like C and like Fortran from like the 70s and 80s. So I work with guys, seriously, I work with guys, I'm probably about 15 years the younger than most dudes on my project. Yeah, even at 44. Like, it's just, Unix and Linux haven't changed that much. Obviously, Linux has, because Linux has only been around since the 90s, but Unix has been around since the 70s, and that command line stuff, the command line stuff that we do, hasn't fundamentally changed, especially in my lifetime. Now, are there new tools and new things that we're putting on the system? And oh yeah, now I have this kubelet process, and we're running Kubernetes, and we're using certificates. Certificates are a lot older than I think a lot of people know too, right? Certificates have been around a long time, but like we have newer ways to use certificates and get certificates into our system. Anyways, where I'm going with that is like don't think just because you're older. We just had one of our guys on Discord just got a job. He had been with IBM for 30 years. So one of the guys that's down in our Discord, he was with IBM for 30 years. I think about a year and a half ago they did like layoffs and stuff, and then he had been looking for work, and he just got work again. Even though, shoot, if you've been working at IBM for 30 years, count up on your fingers, he's probably a little bit older. But the guy's back doing it now. He's doing some management stuff, but I mean, he's back in the tech field. I don't think, like, what I'm saying is, in my field, things don't change that much, but also I think that you can still get in the field at an older age. But a lot of the stuff, you just got to get your hands on it. All right, so let's write some arbitrary names out real quick for what we're going to do. So we're going to register an uptime run, and then we're going to debug the uptime variable to look or to inspect it. The nice thing about Ansible is, especially in the playbooks, is the things that you write and the things that you do are kind of self-documenting. Like, I love running playbooks for changes and then just grabbing the whole playbook and dumping it back in the change, and with everything okay and good at the end, and then just saying, okay, my change is done. And what did I do all night when that change was happening? And you guys think I'm kidding, but I am not kidding. I am watching Netflix or Hulu or whatever while my change is running on one of my other screens. And then at the end of the change, I tell whatever teams or apps or whatever different, I let the bridge know, hey, that part of the change is done. I'm checking it in. And then when I go and drop it in ServiceNow or whatever my tooling is that we report changes back to, I just go and I drop my Ansible playbook in there. I have neurotically tested it in lower environments before, so I knew it was going to run. If it broke anywhere, I could fix that and rerun it, because then it'll still be a clean output, because we write our Ansible that way. In fact, it's funny, I say that, and then this exact thing I'm doing right now is not idempotent. But real quick, we're going to register an uptime variable. We can, I'm going to go back in and do one of my labs, just so I'm in a lab that I know has the environment the same way this one will be. So hit TNS, and then if anybody needs the automation lab, like if you guys are like, oh, that's curious, I just want to go play with the automation labs, here you go. There you go, boom. But I'm going to go here. I'm going to drop back in lab 7, because we're not really doing the lab right now, but I'm using the environment, so because I'm building another one. And this is going to be the shell command, and the shell command is uptime, and then we're going to register from it. So Ansible is going along as a process, and it kind of has like this little sack over its shoulder. If you want to think of it like a little gnome just running around doing its stuff, it's got a little package, like a little like backpack, slung over its shoulder, of all the variables that go with it. if you don't use the word register, the output of this command will not be remembered. Well, it's not remembered anywhere where you can access it, like in the backpack. This uptime command will still have truly run on that system. If this had been an installer or had been anything else that I was running as a shell command, which you could do, if I don't register the variable output, that's fine. It will just have happened, but there will be no like explicit log of it happening. Let's think of it like that. When we register, let's just say uptime, we'll just call it uptime var, I don't know, for fun. Now we're going to debug the uptime variable. So we're going to use the debug module, and we're going to say var is equal to uptime var. So all we're going to do is run a shell command to do the uptime, register that variable and stick it in Ansible SAC. And then in the next play, in the next task of the play, we're going to debug and drop that out to the screen. That's all we're going to do. So let's just do that real quick over here. And when we do the lab, so if you ever do the labs, if you click on any of those labs and do them, what I'm building here on the left will show up like this here, right? And then you'll just be able to push the buttons and it'll go over for you, or you'll have to copy the things in. But because I'm writing it over here, we're just like I'm manually doing it. But then when it's actually finished, when I'm done building the lab, you guys will just go push the button and it'll run. Does that kind of make sense? You guys are like watching me behind the scenes right now. This is not super interesting, I imagine, but I mean it is at least somewhat technical. I gotta take some vitamin C. The wife wants me to take pills, so that's what she came in when she took my truck a minute ago. So let's do this thing that will normally be defined. By the way, YAML can be YML or YAML. It doesn't actually matter. You can go watch people argue on the internet all over the place about it. We're going to be over here building stuff. Let's just say that we want to copy that, drop it over here. Again, you wouldn't have to do that in the actual thing. And uptime var, yeah, that's fine. And then we're going to run Ansible playbook uptime check. And let's just see if it works. So what happened? We see up here that it went and it gathered facts. So we have gather facts set to true. That is going to be in all of our playbooks and all of our labs. I always tell you guys, just set that to true for now. When we're doing 1, 2 nodes, even up to like 100 nodes, set gather facts true. When you get out in the wild and you're working on a system that has like 1,200, 3,000, 6,000 nodes, like some of the clusters I work on, when you work on big sets of nodes, you will a lot of times turn this off. And the reason is because the gather time becomes significant with more nodes, and the memory usage on individual Ansible core where we run Ansible from becomes it becomes a lot more like arduous to the system. And it doesn't really matter. We don't need, like, if you're not using those variables, there's no reason to have them. But also you can set them up on individual hosts later if you need. So if I needed a set of nodes to tell me their time, I could have only on those certain nodes run setup, and setup would only gather and put stuff in the SAC. This is kind of like overstuffing the SAC early on if you have too many nodes. So just there's all kinds of theory that comes in later around, as you have more nodes, you should have more distributed Ansible playbooks. There's also one that I tell you guys often when I was at NOAA, the same project that I'm on, but when we were building it out in 2020, I could not. So we had a requirement. There's 2,600 nodes in each of the 2 big clusters. And if you guys want to see the clusters, it's all published, but it's Dogwood and Cactus. Right? You can find them right here. This was from NOAA when they published these. So if you guys want to go see what the NOAA process looks like and all that, I'll link it to you guys here. But in these systems, we had a requirement from the government that these nodes, when they were bare metal, had to be up and ready to run in 1 hour. That was one of our requirements. And I was the guy, my job was to deploy to those nodes and make those nodes know who they were and build themselves up. This is one of the things I've been good at in my career. Like, I've been good at building systems. Not a lot of people like building systems. You get into building systems a lot and you're like, okay, I just finished one system. No, now I have 80 more. A lot of people don't like that, which is why you get into automation. Well, where I'm going with that is I could not get that kind of process like against all those nodes, even with, I had servers that had 256 cores and 2 terabytes of RAM in them, and I could still not speed up the process to all those nodes. So what I did was I inverted it, and every node pulled their own config, and the config part of it only took 5 minutes after that. So when we were doing, finally, like when we did the government test and proved that we could do it, the first guy brought up all the switches, then it came to my part, and I deployed all the nodes, and they configured themselves with Ansible, and I think we were like 12 minutes in, and I said, okay, my stuff's all done, and they were like, we thought you were going to take like 40 minutes, and I'm like, nope, my stuff took 5 or 6 minutes total to configure all the nodes, and all the nodes were ready. And but again, that's not some genius thing. It's just I noticed that like I couldn't do it. Well, all I'm talking about here is like this gather facts thing. You'll hear people say to turn it off. In most of your early careers in playing with Ansible, it doesn't matter if it's on or off. When you get up into large scale distributions, it'll matter. So that's my point. And also, I didn't need it because each node was configuring itself. I changed Ansible from a push model to a pull model, and every node just runs its own service that one-shots Ansible and configures itself. But anyways, let's look what happened. We got this to run, and the play ran like this. So we're going to say run the play. Run the play. And see Ansible execute a shell command called uptime, register the variable, and then debug the output to the screen, right? And then that's this, right? And then I say here, we're going to look at this real quick, but the next question is, what output do you see collected about that command? Okay, so what output is collected about that command? Well, we see uptime var, and we see a return code of 0. So RC equals 0. RC is a return code that always exists in Linux systems. So let me show you guys here real quick. If I just type the uptime command, there are all kinds of things sitting there kind of waiting behind that are not really seen. And if I echo $? Right, I will get a 0. That $? Is the return code of the last command that I just typed. I'm not going to sit here and prove that to you guys, but that is a common thing to understand when we get into scripting and I want to check something and then get a value back to it that is analogous to a true or a false, a 1 or a 0. And really it's 0 for good and anything else for bad. So true is 0, we search for truth, and everything else is bad in systems, right? Don't worry about all that, but my point is 0 is good. That was the output there. Well, Ansible also captured that output, so that's cool. We see what the command was that we were running, so if we needed to figure out the command or whatever, you're going to see this thing changed. Changed is an interesting value. Changed is the thing that happens in Ansible when the module, or whatever you're calling, now we're using the shell module. The shell module will always return back the value of changed true. There's a reason for that. The reason has to do with idempotency. But this is also the crux of why people say never run a shell command in an Ansible playbook. They're right in a way, but they're right in the same way that we tell a 5-year-old you can't cross the street. Any of you guys have 5-year-olds? I guess a 17-year-old, I guess. But when he was 5, you can't cross the street. Now, can he never cross the street? At 17, I imagine he's smart enough to cross the street now, but he had to learn the rules for how to cross the street first, right? Does that kind of make sense? Well, the shell command and other commands that are like it that cause Ansible to not be idempotent, the problem is that they are just a cannon fired off into the night. Ansible comes along and just fires off the command. And until it gets the return code back, it does not know what happened on that system. So because of that, because it's firing a cannon off into the night and listening basically for it to hit and come back good, it doesn't know what changed in the system or didn't. So it always has to say changed here. By the way, changed will then always trigger what we call handlers. So tasks can alert handlers, and then handlers can do things only when the condition is something changed. So this is why shell commands get a little dicey, because if you're using shell commands for anything other than checking, that's all I ever use it for, is if you're, well, I guess some deployers, but you just need to understand this. Again, this is crossing the street. Can I cross the street? Yeah. Can I? Look, I'm 44-year-old. I'm an adult. Done all kinds of things, right? Can I cross the street when there's a 5,000-pound truck coming at 60 miles an hour? I mean, I can, but I can only do that trick once, right? Well, you know, unless I'm just gonna like walk right out in front of it. But my point is, you just understand why the things are like they are, and then crossing the street is Crossing the street is perfectly safe if you follow the rules of crossing the street. Look one way, look the other way. Nothing big enough to kill me. Cross. By the way, similar rules to the jungle. Look around, don't see panther, walk down, don't get eaten. You might not see the panther that gets you, but so my analogy falls away a little bit there. But anyways, all right, I'm being silly because I don't want to keep going on my writing. But now we can take uptime _var .rc code and do decisions with it. So let's add to this playbook. So anyways, there's all kinds of things. We've got standard error and standard output, which we know from Linux and understanding the command line. There's three things. There's standard input, standard output, and standard error. Those are the three things that happen at a those are the only three things that happen at a terminal, in fact, right? Hey, Benny, over on the YouTube side, how's it going? I'm just building labs, so this is probably less interesting for most people. But, you know, I'm kind of talking through what's going on as I go. So I'm going to go and we're going to do a couple of things, and we're going to make decisions based on some of these things here. So let's, what output do you see? Let's do something with that output to see how conditionals work in Linux. Add this to your uptime check.yaml file. So I'm going to make you guys add something to the uptime.check file. When I don't want it to execute, I take the exec off. That's just the way that the system reads it. All right. Control S and save just for fun. All right, let's make our playbook. Or let's make our update. So we're going to go down here and we're going to make a new one. And this one is going to be debug, or actually we're going to say print out everything good. Just print out, we'll say everything good. If, right, or if the RC above is 0. Right? So, we're going to say debug. And this debug is just going to be a simple message. And it's going to say everything good. But now we're going to add when. And this when condition is going to test uptime _var .rc is equal to 0. Okay? Let's make sure I did that all right without breaking everything. So let's run our playbook. Oh. Okay, guys. You guys gotta stop me sometimes. What did I do? What did I do wrong? Well, as always, I leave something out. So that was all commented, right? That was all commented code. Now, that message, everything good, just happened because the condition of return code is equal to 0. That came out. So, let's do another check. Now we see down here in standard output. So here's standard output and standard output lines. Those just vary a little bit different on how it presents the new line character. Right at the end of every line in Linux, there's a return character, which is \n, right? Yeah, should be \n. And that is the new line character. Well, this one, this line is the same either way because there's no new line characters. But if there were multiple characters, standard out would just dump it to the screen, and you would not see it properly formatted. And standard output lines will inter it'll intercept, or interpolate is another way to put it, the new lines and actually show you it as it would have come to the terminal. Not super useful, the difference, right? But it's not really. I can't think of any reason I need either of those, but maybe for some of you for like pretty printing type stuff, maybe. But I'm not a guy that does that kind of stuff. Like my stuff just, I'm just checking for stuff. Let's look in uptime_var dot standard out for the word day. So if day is in there, then we can say the system has been up for a day. Okay. Yeah. But we don't expect that to show up, do we? I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say Y4Y. And then I'm going to say P. And I'm going to hit O right here. And I'm going to say print out if the standard out if it contains the word day. So it's standard out. And this one's going to be a little different. This is very similar to Python. Yeah, I mean, it's all Python under the hood, right? Up more than a day. I think my thing just reset. Oh, gosh, I thought it just reset, and I was going to have to go in and do all that again. All right, uptime var. Oh, you know what? Hold on. I didn't do this one. That is not what I wanted to do. Hold on. Control V. There we go. Okay. But we only want to there. Yes. Okay. Let's do something. Add this to your uptime check file. Just the last task. Right? So we're going to add that last task. And then I'm going to say we're going to go rerun it. Run the play and see Ansible execute shell call. Okay, we're gonna play and see if the new output. I'm basically going back and fixing stuff that I hadn't already done. Oh, geez, not what I wanted. Come on. Everything good. We're not gonna see that next one. We're gonna see it skip and see if the output shows. Okay, now the following the following task and run it again. Following task and run it again, and that task is going to be here. That should be fine. I might have to fix that later, but we'll see. And run it again. Oh, oops. What is this trying to do? Did this work correctly? What is this trying to do? Just trying to do, and did this work correctly? Those are our two questions that we ask ourselves. All right, let's see if mine might be broken too. I don't know. Let's see. Maybe I broke everything. Ah, hold on. Oh, did I? You guys gotta stop me. You guys gotta stop me. Uptime dot. Wait a minute, that is right. Uptime dot var. Oh, damn. You guys gotta stop me. When? Oh. You know what? We do have to have that around it. That's my bad. There we go. Single quotes. There we go. That'll work. It won't print. It'll say skip. But why did it skip? Well, up more than a day doesn't print out because it's not. There's no word day. But what if there was another word I wanted to look for? What if I looked for? What if I just for fun looked for minute just to test, right? We just want to test it, right? Because I mean you want to make sure that you're right. We want to have our false positives and our right. We know min is going to show up, but it's going to give a bad printout. But we'll see it print out because we're testing it. Right. But that's not how we're going to leave it. We would leave it as day because, and some of you might say, Scott, why would you ever look for a server up less than a day? Does anybody know why I normally would need that for? This is a very common one for me, and I tell you guys it, and for people that haven't had to do this before, you're like, oh, I guess I never thought of it. For people that have used it before are going to be like, oh, I like that, and you're probably going to steal it, and I say steal it because the stealing's good. When I patch 1,000 servers, and it's kernel night, and I know I'm going to have to reboot all those servers and roll through them and this, well, one of the checks I do in my playbooks at the end, because I expect with kernel patching for systems to reboot. So at the end of the night, any server that still says the word, like I'm doing like a 4 or maybe even like an 8 or a 10-hour patching window of all these servers, and I got my junior engineers running around, and I'm kicking stuff off with playbooks against sets of servers. At the end of the night, anything with the word day in uptime is a problem because everything should have rebooted. Does that make sense? Because if you didn't reboot, you didn't go to the new kernel. If you didn't go to the new kernel, you're going to show up on our security reports the next week for not going to the new kernel. Now I got to get a new downtime. I don't want that headache. Remember, I want to be watching Netflix and doing Hulu stuff. I want to be playing around and not being super serious, right? So I want my automation to do the work for me. So anyways, what is this trying to do to work correctly? How could you test, right? How could you test? Maybe try the word min to verify that the search is working correctly, right? I'll just put that in as a little hint, right? Hint. Okay. That part, I'd say that part is done now. Add the following tasks to. What is that file? And run it again. All right. So I don't expect everybody to pick up on what I'm doing, you know, unless you're like really focused in on it. But when the lab's up, you'll be able to go through it and you'll be able to touch all the things and go, oh, okay, I see what I'm doing. And all you're really doing is, you know, adding in the things that we kind of built here. All right. So what do we want to do to test this one? I would say maybe to test this one worked, we would do, I don't know. We just maybe look for the existence of this file. So our Control S to save this one, close it out. Our check for this one is going to be to ls dash, we just do ls uptime check. And then grep uptime check. I don't want none of that stuff. This thing is always trying to be super helpful. Like, you can, if you guys use VS Code at all, like, you don't have to do anything else. It'll just automatically start trying to recommend things. And then I looked it up, and apparently it's like a built-in Copilot, and it does like 3,000 fixes a day. So it'll write code for you and stuff. People call that what, vibe coding or whatever. It's not really what I do, but I think that's perfectly fine for other people that do kind of want to use that. I think it's awesome that you get like 3,000 queries a day on it too. Before I've never gone anywhere near the top of it, but that's my understanding of it. All right, let's go look one more time at our index.json. The last one's gonna be stamping variables with Jinja 2 templates. So we want to stamp variables to servers, or well, yeah. I mean, I guess we could do that. I don't want to just be. I mean, some of these things are redundant to other labs that I have. Like I have a few labs that show you how to stamp out variables, and it's like it's not. I don't want to say it's not super interesting. It's just, I mean, I guess it's almost like we're just taking our medicine at this point. All right, so we'll stamp out the variables with Jinja templates. That's fine. Let's just make 2 files then, and I'm going to grab the files from another location. But before I do any of that, I've been talking for almost 2 hours. That's perfectly correct. You know what? I do that to test you guys, and that was right. And I need to put the single quotes around it. Perfect. No, you're right. See, that's why I need you guys. Like, you guys don't know how much I need you. But that's exactly right, yeah. And I just put the single quotes around it, so that's explicitly fed in. But yeah, that's what we have in the file. That's exactly right. Yep, I did that to test you guys, and you passed. So good. Arduku, I appreciate that. I don't know if that's a play on Count Dooku, but that's awesome. All right. Yeah, so look, guys, we're doing simple things, but I really do think once people kind of play with this stuff, again, I tell you guys all the time, you guys see me doing this and you're like, all right, Scott's pretty good at this. I'm really good at the basics, sure. But I show people stuff all the time and they run off and come back like a couple weeks later with like, they're like, Scott, what do you think of this? And I'm like, oh, that's more complex than anything I ever built. You know, I think that people overestimate how much, you know, because I just am good at the basics. That's what I can do. I know the fundamental pieces and try to show it to people. So let's do this last one. So we've done that. That's perfect. Hit Control S. I'll test this extensively here in a few, and then we'll just look for uptime check. That's fine. And then now we're going to go to step 3. So step 3 is the last one. Let's go in step 3 here and let's clean this up. So we say you have decided to stamp out information to servers for 2 reasons. 1, you want the servers to know information about themselves. 2, put a space here, and then say 2, you want to know when actions occurred on servers, right? So maybe you did an install or something like that and you want to know when actions created on servers, what certain when you want to know the state of servers when certain actions occurred. And this one, I get less play on this one as far as like, I have had to do this where I stamp down like when I do an install and what the version of the kernel was and this, so that if I get a question later from one of my 200 dev teams, and this I always use that as an example, but when I worked at AAA we had about 200 different dev teams. It wasn't to be argumentative with people. Like I tell people often, like engineering isn't always about being argumentative with people. Sometimes it's just to be truthful, right? Like the value of an engineer is how good they are at dealing with truth, right? Like my system was set up correctly, this and this and this, solving problems, right? It's finding truth, right? Everything I joke around about, but it's true. Engineering really is like a search for truth in systems. Well, where I'm going with that is sometimes I like to stamp down because then I get a question later and it's like, man, this server's been patched since then. You guys have changed your version of Java, and I have all of these things here to prove it. Again, not to be a dick about it, but it's just like, well, the simple solution is let's just remove it, redeploy, and then maybe that solves the things because you guys are using a really old version of my stamping program or whatever, right? Maybe I'm just doing it so I know which version of my stuff it was. So, I tell you guys that, but stamping information down onto servers is I think super useful. And then the other one, the top one, is you want the servers to have information about themselves. So I have playbooks that actually already show us how to do this. So we're going to go steal stuff heavily from myself, specifically up here. But before I do that real quick, we're going to take a little break. So how do we take breaks around here? We typically just go to like our, doesn't really matter. I normally just turn my camera off. And then I just pull up my little hourglass. And we used to look at Ranger Cam, but Ranger passed away in July. So now we don't have Ranger Cam anymore. But I'll just do, take a break. We'll say 8 minutes. We typically do like 8 minutes. Excuse me. Take a break, stretch your legs. We'll come back, keep working on this stuff. I want to get these labs done because we're already up in Unit 7 of the admin or the automation course, and I just want to kind of get caught up and make sure people have work to do that is, some value. So, all right, I'll be back. We'll take a walk. Guys, I just found one extra slice of pizza from last night downstairs. So now I've got some pizza to munch on. So, I still won't be on camera, but you guys will hear me munching. And if you guys have questions, let me know. But we're just working on this stuff. Also, I can move that up. Move that up just like that. Boom. There you go. Yeah, one extra piece of pizza in the fridge. And a monster. Some of you guys know I drink a fair amount of Monster. Guess we could play some more Brotato while we're sitting here. Because I can still play Brotato on my break. If you guys aren't familiar with Brotato, fun little time waster. We're still on break. Basically just run around killing everything. You're a Brotato that landed on some hostile planet. And you're just killing everything. I'm playing with my right hand, not my left hand. It's my key micro isn't as good with my right hand. That's not bad. Attack speed is huge on this guy, so is damage. Can't let those little eggs pop. Those little eggs pop, they turn into these really annoying guys that have a lot more hit points. So. Oh, there's one of them. They got a lot more hit points than they normally would if you just kill the egg. Man, I let 2 of them pop? That's more than normal. I'm normally pretty on it. Alright. Damage. We need a gun. Alright. Can't believe I ran into that guy. All right, that's my break. I have one more bite of pizza though. Just give me one more second here to finish. Finish the level, finish the pizza. All right. You guys have never seen Brotato, that's a pretty fun little game. I just stuffed way too much of that last slice of pizza in my mouth, so give me a second here, guys. Control S on this. And for this last part, we're going to stamp the servers, create a file, it's not Ginger 2, it's a should we're going to make a patching.fact file, and we're then going to go steal from our Ansible labs my patching. Let's go with prod patching fact. All right, and this file is going to look like this. So in this case, we have key value pairs, patch group, group 2, rebooting true, app server true. It's not a database or web server. But I think very quickly, anybody could look at that and kind of figure out what's going on. And let's go look. So in this one, in the hosts file, we have that. And in host 2, we have client and server. In host example 3, we have those. Let's just go to our host file. Let's see how much we want to steal from this other lab, because my other lab has quite a few things about how we push our fact, right? Like what we're doing. We could actually just take these and push them over, but we're not going to worry about that. We'll just go ahead and take this for now. That's fine. This comes from another lab that I wrote years ago now. And it shows you how to push different fact files to do two different servers, which again, I do tell people if you're doing the automation course, I think it does have a lot of value to go look at the Ansible labs, but we are focused mostly over here on this. And so patching.fact, and then create a file. File to push, create a Ansible playbook to push that file over to the server in the correct location, right? And we were using, let's see, were we using servers earlier? Because we have, that was local, but we do definitely have hosts sitting here, and that's fine. Not really doing anything with them, but we at least have them. That's fine. Yeah, we'll do that. So over here, patch group, create an Ansible playbook, push that over. We'll just vi push.yaml or fax push.yaml, right? And then in here, we're going to drop all this in, and we don't need to debug that because we're not doing that. And patching fax push, sure. Servers, sure. Create the directory, push over the root prod. Nope, we just need patching.fact. And then we're going to just push it to patching.fact. and we're just going to push the patching packed file. We're not doing it if it's a that. Okay. Now run this to see the file push to servers. That's going to be like this: plain Ansible playbook, Ansible. Yeah, that's fine. Root hosts. It's already going to go to servers, and then .yaml. All right, and then that'll be because we want to exec it, so we'll let it exec. And let's go actually watch this work if it's going to work. So clear vi facts patching.fact. And let's drop in our patching fact. Boom. There's our patching fact. Right? So there's our patching fact, whatever that means and whatever info we want. And then we'll say Ansible, we'll vi our facts push.yaml. And we'll put this in there, right? So this is going to run against servers, which are in that host file. We already validated that. And we're going to go push this over. Create the directory on the machine. And if it's not there, which it won't be there because Ansible's not on the boxes. And then root patching fact. And then, yep, destination, put it in there. And then we'll run it, which is Ansible playbook -I root hosts, and then facts push.yaml. So this should run. It should push it to both servers. Now this is really, I guess, if there were magic to be had, this is where it happens. Did this successfully? I got all the letters, but it's spelled shit instead. Successfully run on the server. Can you output the variables that the servers now know about themselves in an Ansible playbook or an Ansible play? Yeah, and the answer looks like this. Now we're just going to say Ansible servers, and we're not going to do that. We're going to do the module setup. And then we're going to filter. Filter is going to be on Ansible _local, right? Ansible local are variables that the servers know about themselves and that they kind of bring from that Ansible facts.d directory. Anything that's in there is going to be accessible. Whoops. Oh, that's not good. Back all that out. Yeah, there we go. That didn't even do what I wanted. Hold on. Didn't even copy what I actually did want. There we go. Let's see. Right, so now we see. Did it work? Oh. -I. And if that worked, let's fix it over here. What do those servers now know about themselves? What are they bringing to any future playbooks? Any playbooks forever that use the setup module to find stuff out about servers are now inside of Ansible local going to know about patching and whatever, whatever. That is simply, is that step 2? Yeah, no, this was 1. So you want the servers to know information about themselves. So what information? I commonly use patching as an example because that's one that I've run. Guys, I've literally patched hundreds of thousands of Linux servers in my career now, right? Like literally just huge swaths of servers in my career. So much so that like on those nights when I'm running these things, I'm just over here watching Netflix or whatever. But I'm honestly like, I just have the automation running and then I'm, alerting my junior engineers to go fix things or sometimes I have to fix them, but it just depends on, what's going on across big swaths of servers. But this one has proven tremendously useful to me because the main reason why Does anybody here ever work with a CMDB, configuration management database? It's a very common thing in IT world. Are they ever up to date? Have they ever in the history of this world ever been up to date? Some are good. I would say some are good. Did you guys ever see, there's an old show, Seinfeld. I love Seinfeld, right? And one of the things me and my wife joke around about this, it's like, they knew it wasn't me delivering the mail. You gave 90% of people got the mail. No postal carrier has ever gotten over 50%. And it's Newman. And he's like, Newman. And he goes and delivers the mail for Newman because he's a postal carrier. And like 90% of people get their mail. And Newman tells them, everybody got their mail. They knew it wasn't me doing the deliveries. Well, that's how I feel about like systems work. Like, people are happy with CMDBs if they're even 50% accurate because they're all fucking pieces of shit. Okay, that's not true. Well, yes, it is. CMDBs are constantly bad. So I'm keeping, my server knows this information about itself. It's like he's got a little note on his backpack and the teacher knows not to give the kid peanut butter or whatever, whatever. It's like the things that my server can know about itself. If I set rebooting to false on a set of servers that I know for damn sure if they ever come up in a list, right? Like, because I'm just feeding lists in that I'm getting out of change management tickets. If you guys think that I can look through 1,000 servers to make sure that that one right there shouldn't have rebooted tonight, I guarantee you I can't. And even if I was smart enough to do that, I wouldn't do it because I would be doing something else that made me even more money for being that smart. I can't do that. But my server can let me know. By the way, a common one for this that I don't have here, but I do professionally, is my server behind a load balancer? And if my server's behind a load balancer, I never will reboot it unless I'm doing load balancer things in a load balancer block. So then now my server lets me know. It doesn't matter if you told me, oh, there's no web customer facing servers running tonight. Doesn't matter. My server knows what he is. So I don't give a damn what your CMDB that's 50% accurate and you're like Newman happy with yourself, right? Does that kind of make sense? I'm not trying to like overcomplicate that, but we mostly stole this from that other lab, but it's valuable to see how to stamp things to the servers. And I always tell you guys, it's like how does the teacher know all the kids' allergies? Well, what if all the kids just had a note pinned like to their shirt or their backpack that told the that's what this is like. This is your server bringing information with it to the playbook. And then now your playbooks can be smart and know these things. Now, you might say, doesn't that overly, complicate it? Well, obviously this is in an environment you control. And if you came to an environment that I controlled, you would either have to learn my methods or you would have to write your own in, and then we would have to agree on some things. But guys, agreements between teams is one of the biggest things around anyways. Like, that's where a lot of conflict comes in, right? Like, they want to insist to call their environment prod A and prod B, but you're like, we don't call things prod unless they are prod. And they're like, well, I never thought of this as dev. Well, don't call it fucking prod then, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's all these things where that's where all the conflict comes in IT. A lot of this work is easy. What we stamp on servers, like the process of stamping servers and patching them is literally easy. But what am I allowed to patch tonight? That's hard. And what, that kind of stuff. So load balancer remind me how AWS yeah, fair enough. Yeah. I don't know if any of you guys read that. One of our guys worked on, actually we have a few guys that work for AWS on our server, probably quite a few, but a few that are pretty vocal and I've known for a long time. And one of them showed the thing. If you guys go look, they publish what happened. It's always DNS, right? It's always DNS in this world. But okay, anyway, so we got to do one more. Do you see that the servers now know information about themselves that you have stamped down in their... I'll ask that as a question. Do you now see that the servers have information about themselves? You have stamped that. You have stamped that information in their etc ansible facts.d anything.fact file, right? And then that's how it's going to read out. A lot of qued stuff melt load balance. Yeah, I do a fair amount. It went like the domino effect. I wouldn't be surprised. I 100% wouldn't be surprised. Some of our guys were working late night doing fixes on that kind of stuff too. Yeah, so I heard a fair amount about that. Yeah. Um, let's get this last part in, so we can call this lab. By the way, look, I'm almost out of time on this lab, but I don't really care about what's going on in that lab specifically. What are the other things we're going to do? You want to know the state of a server when certain actions occurred. So we want to stamp something out to the server. So now we need to stamp information into the server, right? About the state of the server when something occurred, right? So make a Jinja2 file that will be stamped to the server at a certain time, right? And the way that's going to work, we're going to go steal this from ourselves again, because again, I wrote a lot of these already, but we're pulling them over because the automation course is, again, more about doing automation in the enterprise and doing automation professionally than it is just doing tasks, right? So we're stealing tasks from my other stuff, but we are we're using them in a noble way. I'm just kidding. Let's grab this and let's go back over here. So we've grabbed our Jinja template, VI. So we're going to VI. We'll call this stamp.j2, right? And then plain and VI stamp.plain. And now we're going to put some different information in here than we just do in this basic one. And where would we get that information? Well, we might grab some of these pieces of information here. So I might say, right, and my patching report may be, you know, I may say patching report, and then down here I might say rebooting, right? And now we're going to be reading, so we're going to be reading this back in this other playbook. We're going to be reading this thing that we just did earlier, but now we're going to be stamping it on the server when some other thing happened. So, which Linux distro do you fit? So right now I'm pretty heavily involved with Rocky. So I've been doing a lot of Rocky 9.6 builds for government projects and stuff. I am professionally running SLES on some government stuff that I'm doing, but mostly like the stuff that I like to run. And it's actually funny you asked that, Kaizen, because I have built. In fact, it was exactly 1 month ago I built out my Proxmox server. I messed with it for like 2 days on stream, and I have not touched that server since. So I just have this big Proxmox server sitting in my other office, and I haven't done a single thing with it. So that's kind of funny. And so it's funny that you bring that up. I'm going to have a night where that's all I do. Oh, let me move this back up too. I meant to move that up so it wasn't, whoops, not that. Hold on. I meant to move this up so that you guys could see what you were talking about. And then, oh, anyways, but yeah, I'm a big fan of Rocky. Mostly I use a lot of Rocky Linux because that's just kind of professionally what I've been doing. Rebooting is going to be Ansible local dot patching dot rebooting, right? And then that's going to tell me was the system set to reboot. So I can even say here set to reboot. And actually, I could say, yeah, that would be fine. That would be fine. Set to reboot, local, Ansible local patching dot reboot, and then we could go right here. Actually, so well, we could start to get into some decisions here and only print out the type of server it is. Oh, I don't want to get that much into Jinja right now. I have other labs that do Jinja. Problem with Jinja is it's never pretty, because it's a templating language. It should be pretty because it's templating language. I'm just not good at making it pretty. Let's be honest about that. At least not in the way it looks. So let's just say, but real quick, we could just say, real quick, patch group. Right? And then right here, we would just drop in the patch. So it's the same thing, Ansible local dot patching dot patch underscore group. Let's just do that for now, right? And that'll be, this lab's about to reboot, so we're going to have to redo this part of the lab anyways. Let's just reset the lab because it's at 0 seconds or 0 minutes it was going to go. Yeah, Rocky's great. If you haven't used Rocky, Rocky's pretty good. Rocky's a good tool for automation. Hold on, can I get this? I'm trying to get that there. Is that better? Is that working still? Okay. Yeah, I wanted you guys to be able to see your chat, but not there. All right. So let's rerun we're going to rerun the scenario. We don't need what's going on over here. That's why I've moved this out of the way, because I'm building lab. We're building lab 5 technically right now, but we're on the last piece of it. Control S. And then VI that stamp. Okay, so now we have to create the push over to stamp this on machines as they do some activity, as a playbook is executed on them, right? So VI, and we'll call this stamp.yaml, right? So we'll VI stamp.yaml, and then this is going to be plain, and we are going to write. We're going to go steal this from me. Again, I'll steal everything from myself. Here is my template.yaml for how I'm going to push that over to the other system. Now we're going to have to modify it, right? It's not exactly right. But Jinja template stamp. Let's call this a stamp. And servers are still going to be there. GatherFacts is still going to be true. Copy the template over to all hosts is going to be root, and it's not going to be template now because we're using stamp.j2. So stamp.j2. And the destination is going to be stamp dot. And now we're going to do something a little silly. We're going to use Ansible date time dot. And we're going to use a format that I need to look up real quick. So let me show you guys how I look up the format, because this is a very useful format for this. Now, we have all the information here. So we're going to say Ansible servers -i root hosts. We're in root, so we don't need that. And then we're going to do -m setup -a, because I want to filter to equal Ansible _date _time anything like that. Now this is going to come out with all these formats, but I want one specific one that I really like for files, which I couldn't remember exactly. It's ISO 8601 _basic _short. And the reason I like this one is because that plays really nice in a file system. There's nothing like down here in micro or ISO 8601. So I'm going to drop that right there. Paste. Boom. That is like the worst paste I've ever seen. What just happened there? Boom. ISO 8601 basic short. Perfect. Okay. Because now that'll get stamped to the file, and then if we run this multiple times, it'll just keep stamping. So it won't overwrite. We don't want it to overwrite, because what if our values changed? So we want it to have that. This value will only work, guys, right here, as with most values that are generated via the setup, is if you do your GatherFacts as true, or if you run the setup module or the setup module specifically for time. We're not going to get into all that now, but I'm just telling you, like, those things happen. Yeah, CentOS is dead. Yeah, it's mostly Rocky or Alma. And people, it seems to me like people in Europe really like Alma because they're kind of centered out of there, it seems like. And then it seems like a lot of U.S. government. In the last year, I've deployed probably close to 10,000 systems for the government. And I'd say 9,500 of those have been Rocky. Only about 500 of those have been RHEL. So Red Hat Enterprise Linux, right? That's RHEL, or RHEL. That's funny. Okay. Anyways, doesn't matter. Let's stamp it. Stamp, text. Good. So let's go make this real quick. We've got to do, by the way, we've got to do the whole lab over, because didn't the lab just reset? And I'm trying to pull some variables here that only exist. These variables only exist, guys, if I did all this. Oh, there's Ranger. Oh, Ranger dog. Love that dog. But that's Oh, my whole system just crashed. You guys still with me? I don't know if you guys are still with me. My whole system just broke. Let's do this full. We got to do this whole first part real quick. Patching.fact. And in here, we're going to make this. You guys are still with me? Oh, yeah, my whole system just like froze. I don't know why that's doing that, but boom, got that. Then we're going to do vi facts push.yaml, right? And then we're going to hit I on this. We're going to push those all over. Now, I honestly like try to recommend for you guys that are doing this and wanting to learn this, spend a little time with what you're doing. When you're doing these in the lab, you'll just be able to push the button, push, and it'll do all the stuff for you, right? I mean, you got to do the copy and paste in, but this button would be an exec. You would just push it and it would run. But I try to tell you, like, look at what you're doing, right? Pick your head up and watch this run and see that it stamped that over to all those nodes. And then when we run this here, right? So now we're running it to verify. We're going to see that it stamped that information to the two servers. Yes, those servers have now brought back that information that we stamped to them in Ansible_local.patching.whatever. And then that was the first part of, well, we're in the third step of the lab, but that was the first part of the lab. And then now we come down here and we're going to VI this stamp Jinja 2. So this is a different thing now that we're doing. And in here, we're going to stamp all of this. And look at these little variables. Again, they are filling out. These variables are filling out very much just like a Madlib or an Adlib, if you guys have ever seen those. This is a fully generated file by Ansible. Let's go ahead and do this, and then we'll just cat it so it comes all to the screen. Fully generated file, we're going to use Ansible_date_time.date, and then at this time, so it's going to stamp that information in there. And then it's going to say the Ansible node name, the Ansible family, the processor count, because maybe I needed to know that for when I deployed this. All these things are here. And then we're going to go grab some things out of here. We're going to use Ansible_local.patching.rebooting to know, was the server set to reboot when we did this? Because maybe that's something that, again, I tell you guys, it's not like you're going to be in front of a court of law and somebody's going to be accusing you, but it's very possible that your team gets questioned. And if you're anything like me, I'm working on stuff and doing other stuff, and you guys might think I'm being hyperbolic about this, but I am not. I forget things literally as soon as I do them. And you guys might think I'm kidding, but you've probably seen it happen a few times today. I literally forget things as I'm done doing them and move to the next thing. So if you ask me, or if you accuse my team of having stamped some bullshit to their servers 3 months ago, I can't defend myself. I can show you the work that I did, and I can show you where my scripts I think were at that point, and maybe I can even show you Git commits, but I don't fucking know what my team did. I don't know what I did. I literally don't know what I did last week, guys. So by doing this and stamping, this may not seem super interesting to you, and maybe this isn't super interesting, but we could be doing any of those uptime variables from earlier. We could pull in all kinds of things about the system. So my point is, it's almost like I'm showing you the easel, and I'm showing you the paint, and I'm showing you the brushes, and then I'm like, but I can't make you Bob Ross. You have to figure out where your application of this is, right? Like, do you want to paint little happy trees on a lake with a cabin, or do you? I don't know what you're going to do with this. I can just show you where these things are, right? So something to think about. What if you write some log like GitLog? You could write to logs for sure, absolutely. I'm a big fan of logging stuff out to like Loki or Kafka or something like that. Absolutely, yeah. There's all kinds of other things we could also do. This is just, I like, because I do so much with physical and virtual servers. When I say virtual, or when I say physical servers, I also mean virtual servers. I mean servers that are fat. When they go down, they come back up, they're stateful. You know, they remember things about themselves. They're not stateless. And this is a useful thing in that environment. In a stateless node, it's just whatever the last deployment was, and all the nodes better be the damn same. But anyways, all right, that doesn't matter. So we got that right. Let's go write our vi stamp.yaml. And then in here, our vi stamp.yaml is going to look like this. Boom. Paste. Yep. ISO 8601 basic short. And now if this one works, we're going to come down here and then I'll say execute this. Execute this playbook. That's going to be plain. This is going to be Ansible playbook -I root hosts stamp.yaml. Right? Now let's run it. And I'm copying it back and forth because that's what's going to be in the actual lab when the lab comes up. So I just want to see it work, right? So did it work? Did it stamp? No errors. So check that the log, or check that the stamped file is correctly rendered. This is going to be cat root. It could be stamp dot text, I guess. That would probably be the easiest way to find it. Because if somebody runs this multiple times, it'll have a bunch of them, right? And then maybe I'll say ls-l root stamp dot text. So if you had multiple of them, it would show them. Whatever. We'll rewrite it. Because here's the thing. If you were to run this a few times, right? You run it just a few times. It's going to keep stamping, but with a new timestamp. And then if you run this, you would see them with the multiple timestamps. And then if you were to cat it, you would get all of them coming out, right? But they would be stamped correctly with the right time of when they happened. So that why might you want this behavior? Something to think about. I'm actually super happy that lab's all done now. So now, hold on. So now my verify is going to be that command right there. Because as long as there's at least one, this will exit 0. So that's my check. If there's at least one, that lab is good. So now we're ready to push the lab up. And if anybody wants to work on it with me and see it, then we're gonna have lab 5 done. So for people who got here later, structure.json, we have unit 5 variables, right? We talked about unit 5 like 3 weeks ago in the course. But now I showed a bunch of different labs to go do, but now I've pulled together what I think is one full coherent lab that let's check to make sure there's nothing else silly going on with it. Index.json has loading variables in Ansible, registering using variables, stamping variables with Jinja2 templates. Okay. Execute your automation tools to utilize its automation labs unit 5 variables. All of these are extra. We could pull a lot of these out, but we'll just leave them. And then Kubernetes 2 nodes. Okay. I think we have pretty much all the stuff done. Now we're just going to go over here and we're going to say automation lab 5 completed. Right, push it up. And for anybody, before I sync that change, I'm going to show you guys here real quick. For people that haven't seen this behavior before, this is a fun one. We're going to watch. This is actually sitting here for it to trigger. And this was last pushed like 2 days ago when I built the other lab, or was that yesterday? Now you're going to see that change in real time. Right above me, you're going to see that change there in real time. So it's got a hook over to my GitHub, which is super easy. If any of you guys ever want to set these up and run your own, you got something in Linux you want to teach people how to do, it's all free to do in Killer Coda. And all the labs for you guys to do are free. So it's just an awesome free service. I guess there used to be a thing called Katacoda back in the day, and this is kind of, and it was like Kata Coda, and then I think that got bought by somebody like O'Reilly's or something. I don't know who it was, but they closed it all down. Somebody here probably knows the lore behind it. But now it's committed, and it says Automation Lab 5 completed. So now I go in Automation Labs, and if it's not broken, it should be sitting right here as Lab 5. And if anybody wants to do it with me, here we go. I'm going to link the lab if anybody wants to do it. I expect there to be some problems, guys. I expect to have to fix some of this. But we could go right here, and let's close all this down, all my shameless stealing of myself. And we'll have Unit 5 open because we might have to fix some things here. And now we are going to read it. We are going to watch and read this in real time because, you know, I got to make sure everything flows right. So I say this lab is designed as part of a larger set of instruction that is free from the Professional Linux Users Group. So this is all free stuff, guys. Like, I give away all this stuff because I want to see you guys get into the field and do this stuff. I want you guys to knock me off so I can go retire and, I don't know, do something else. This lab book for the course is found here. I think I might need to update this one of these days, but this should link you guys over to the course. This is Lab 5. So we're doing environment and local variables and systems, so that's good. Your deployment team has been looking for ways to deploy different environments. You know that your Ansible playbooks are static, and you need to reuse them for different environments. This is very important. Like, there's a certain amount of power in doing things just Ansible would be very powerful even if you just copied these over and changed them. But if you learned how to load different things and make it keep popping out the same way, even though there's differences, that's even more powerful. Question, hold on. I'm just getting started with Linux, discovered science and technology here in Twitch. Yeah, well, hopefully, if this is useful stuff to you, we've got a Discord you can hang out in. You can click that link and go join. We've got a bunch of people down there working on stuff. I recommend, you know, I always tell people the most important thing about getting good at Linux, I really do believe, is just getting your hands on Linux. Like, when you want to do Linux as much as you want to breathe, you're going to be good at it, right? That's an old Socratic thing. Socrates said that to somebody. You know, when you want wisdom as much as you want to breathe, you'll be good at it. Well, it's the same idea here. You don't have to be that crazy about it, but to be good at this system stuff, you really have to start doing the system stuff. Right? You got to start working in there. So anyways, yeah, you're welcome to hang out. We are working on this particular lab, and we're going to go. You decide to research the use of variables in Ansible, so examine variable use in Ansible. Use setup to see collected variables and target servers, about target servers and environment. So we want to see the variables that are there, and then load variables from different sources into your playbook. So that's like our behaviors. That's what we're trying to do here. So I say create a playbook that shows the username and password. So we're going to just VI YAML. Boom. And you, guys, you can type it out if you want. I mean, I think, shit, I'm going to type it out from now on. That just pissed me off. But now we're going to write in this information here, right here. Boom. I am going to copy this because that's a lot. And I did it all earlier, so I know it's good. But what are we trying to do? We're looking only at the local host, so we're going to run something local. Gather facts can be true. We don't have any special variables, but now the first task is debug username and password. And it says this is username, that's a variable, and their password is password. Okay. And I say execute this playbook to see it run. So hit escape :WQ, or I think it's like Shift ZZ. Some people use, I don't know. I don't use that. But now we're going to run this playbook and watch it break. And I say, if this broke, why did it break? You got to get used to, guys, in the systems world, there's only three things, and I've said this before, but I'll always emphasize this. There's only three things a terminal can do. It can take input from you, it can give you good output, or it can give you error, standard error. In this case, it happened to make it colored red, so that's nice, but it didn't need to be red, and I'm colorblind anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But it says right here, we got a problem. Looks like stuff's busted. And in here, you got problems with quotes, and maybe something's busted, but... Uh-oh, hold on. I didn't get that last quote. Well, so this is different. We're going to go to the end of this line. All right, I didn't get the final quote. Well, that'll also give you an error. But let's say you did it right. This will still give you an error, but a different error. And this error says, well, you've got a bunch of variables, buddy, and those variables are undefined. So, well, You know, when you went to run this automation tool called Ansible, it reached in to look for username and password, and it came up with nothing. Like it reached in a bowl that it thought was going to have a value that it could print out, and there was nothing in the bowl. The bowl said username, and the other bowl said password, and there was nothing in it. So at runtime, this broke. The syntax was fine. The syntax was broken the first time. I didn't do that on purpose. I just missed that last quote. So now how do we fix that? Well, we can give the username and password at the command line. That's not super secure though, but I'll put Scott and password in there. And now it properly debugged out from the variable username and password. It properly debugged out that this is the user Scott and their password is secure. Okay. So we handed that in at the command line, and we looked at this earlier. We were talking about like modules and where were we at? I think it might even have it in this lab. But we could pass this variable information in another way. We could say vi info.yaml, and in here we can go drop a YAML version and make sure that space is there, or this will break all over the place. Escape : WQ. And now we can modify that original user playbook to allow vars files to be read. Right, info.yaml. By the way, this is all right here. We're adding vars files there and info.yaml. And we're going to run the playbook again. And when we run that playbook, it's now not going to have the extra variables at the command line, but it's still going to properly debug those out. Well, so now we got a problem. We're going to go click and read about variable precedence here. Right? Here's variable precedence. But there's an old saying, guys. There's an old saying in engineering. And if you've never heard this before, allow me to be the one to tell you. One test is worth 1,000 expert opinions. So we know that this is what's supposed to be true. We know that extra variables should have the highest precedence. They should win. And they should win over the vars files that's down in level 14, right? As far as our hierarchy, this is the most high precedence. Well, let's go check. We know that our system is going to read, but we're going to give it some bullshit not Scott username and not secure password. So now our system's going to have a problem. And this comes directly from our discussion for Unit 5. But let's go cat user. Oh, it's info. Oh, I thought it was... What the fuck is that? Anyways, here it is. Let's go look at this real quick. It's got the file that it's reading here. But now we're going to also run something in at the command line and give extra vars, which we believe should take precedence. But again, that's one of these sayings, one test worth 1,000 expert opinions. Let's verify which one took precedence. Not Scott, and their password is not secure. So that is that. I said, what was printed out? Is this what you expected from the variable precedence? And the answer that's yes. So that's good. This is one of those things like it's documented here, right? But is anybody going to read that and remember that? I don't think most of us are. Maybe one of you will. But for me, I now know from just testing that this one for sure happens before this one, for sure. I just tested it. That test is worth 1,000 expert opinions, 1,000 blog posts on it, and all this other stuff. I saw it happen a certain way. I know that worked that way. So this is one of these things I often tell you guys: when you do stuff and when you do labs, you're testing, improving stuff to yourself. All right, so I haven't had anything to fix over here yet, so let's keep going. Switching gears a little here, let's look at the variable Ansible can read from GatherFacts. I'll make this a little bigger for you guys. So Ansible will just run this and look at setup. This is going to dump a bunch of stuff to our screen. Lots of info about the servers. And maybe then we want to filter down to just distribution information. So maybe we filter it down. There's a problem. What does Ansible know about the different servers? So let's go fix that. Switching gears a little bit. What does Ansible know about the different servers? Control S, so we'll have to push that up and then do the lab again. And then what does the system know about, so here's the distribution info. What about just kernel info? Does it know just kernel info? And looking at these, what information about the kernel shown? Well, that's interesting. The version of the kernel, very nice. All the other information that I might need. So Ansible kernel is like uname-r. It's a very short output about just the version info of the kernel. I don't see, it might be Ansible Arch, but sometimes you want to know uname-m. So you may be able to, maybe with like architecture, Ansible might know the architecture of the system. Yeah, there it is. So now we're finding variables that are very useful. What if I knew across a set of 1,000 servers, somebody's asking me to deploy some tool, and I know some of them are going to be x86-64 and some of them are going to be ARM. ARM is a very common architecture now for, especially in high performance compute. And I can show you a few ARM systems. If you go to Top 500 to see the top 500 fastest supercomputers in the world, a bunch of them are ARM nowadays. So the ARM systems are out there. Yeah, guys, these labs are all free for you to do out in Killer Coda. So I don't charge anything for them, even if I could. They don't charge you anything to be part of Killer Coda. I've been using Killer Coda since probably 2021. I've been building labs out there. They've never charged me nothing. They don't even send me emails. So I'm in their Slack, but I don't really talk much in there. All right, so we did that first part. Check. Validation successful. Cool. Now you've examined the basics of loading variables into Ansible. So you did some stuff. You saw what variables were there. Now you want to collect variables during execution and make decisions based on those variables. Okay. So now we're going to VI a file called uptime. Check.yaml. You do have to spell it the exact same way, otherwise the rest of the playbook. But if you wanted to spell it any other way and just run it, the lab doesn't care. Just you do want to make sure that's there. And what is this thing doing? If we cat the file real quick, uptime check is running against just our local host. We're not using some other inventory. And we are running a shell command uptime and then saving the output of it to a file called uptime_var. And then we're just going to debug everything that happened to the screen. That's all we're going to do. Just dump it all to the screen. Yeah, Vistelli, hopefully it's useful to you. We have a whole bunch of people in the Discord that are generally helpful and generally trying to get people into this space and make you guys understand it better. And, you know, this is what we do. We hang out and we do Linux. We have regular meetings. We got some guys that do Bash heavily, right? We got guys that focus on cloud. We have guys that focus on security. There's all kinds of stuff. So very important. All right, so let's run it. Again, why talk about it? Let's just run the thing and see if it works. If it worked, which it did, it debugged everything about that uptime var. So now it's always in JSON format. So uptime_var dot return code was good. The return code of 0 is always good in computer science. It means that there's nothing left hanging. We closed everything out and we have returned good. 0 is good in computer science, right? But then there's a bunch of other info about the system. A bunch of other good, tasty little pieces of data. And now we're going to modify that file a little bit and add something here to say that that was good. So instead of just debugging this to the screen, we're going to interpret that an uptime_var dot rc of 0 means that everything is good. It may seem silly, right? Because some of you are going to go, well, that's silly. Why would you say everything's good? Well, it's almost like we're walking through a play, right? Where it's almost like we're walking through, and you're like, well, Scott, like I know here I would hit you in the head with the sword, and I go, do it. We're practicing. We're doing, and you might say, well, but I don't want to hit you with the sword while we're practicing for the play. And I say, do it like you're really doing it, right? And I've never been a playwright or anything, but I know that for certain rehearsals, you're more serious about it because it's not like we're pretending anymore. Now we're doing it. Well, where I'm going with this is, you might say, Scott, you're just saying everything is good. Well, what if this instead was an execution that deployed something? Or what if this was the start of a block and that block said that when uptime var was good, instead of saying everything was good, we executed what was in the block. So this is this is very much like laying the foundation for all the other things that we're going to do later, right? It's a crawl, walk, run method. We learn how to touch each of the different pieces, and then when we're ready, we go and guys, we're going to do all kinds of other things that are decisions through the course of this automation course. But this was back in week 5, and it's like, it's very much light, just do a decision, right? Actually, we haven't even really done a decision, except if that variable is exited good, then we say everything is good. But anything here, anything with this when condition can happen. Same thing I show you guys like when we do loops, right, at the command line. By the way, let's run this real quick and watch it run. Did it work? Did it break all over the place? No. Everything good. It's the same thing with this. If I can say while true, like this, and then I do like uptime, and then I say sleep 5 done, and then we just say do. Right? If I do that, and every 5 seconds I can do that, well, then I can do anything I want between do and done. I can do, instead of uptime, or maybe I do uptime still, I don't care. I also do like, I don't know, ping-c1 www.google.com. All right, so now I'm doing 2 things. Well, if I can do all that, couldn't I also then, I can do anything I want between the do and the done once I understand the syntax, right? And it's the same kind of idea with your scaffolding. Ansible's a lot like scaffolding around automation, where now once I can get this condition met, I can do all kinds of things with it. So, all right. So, we ran our uptime, and it all worked. That was not what we wanted. What's happening here? All right, run our uptime here. Did it work? Yes. Now, we're going to go do something a little different. We're going to modify that again, and we're going to go a different direction now. At Shift-G-O, we're just going to add this little block at the bottom. And this little block says that if the system's up for more than a day, I want you to debug and say up for more than a day as my printed message. Only when the word day shows up in the uptime underscore var dot standard out. So there's a standard output that was coming to the screen here. And if that standard output has the word day in it, I want to know. Now, I don't see the word day in there, so I don't expect this, but I do expect to see it skip. So let's run it, if it works, if it doesn't break everywhere. Now, some of you guys were probably looking at that. What was that command? Some of you were looking at that, and I did this earlier when I was making it, and I said, why would I want to know this? And for me, when I patch things, let's say I patch 1,000 servers, and I know they have kernels patching, so I know they all need to reboot. Well, this is a wonderful check for me, because I go do a check of an uptime across 1,000 servers. All the servers are up. They all look good, right? But 10 of them have the word day in their uptime. Those have not rebooted in the last 24 hours. I need to reboot my servers. So now, before we get out of the change window, before we call everything good, I'm having my engineers go, we make sure they've, and maybe I have other checks. I have all kinds of checks for you guys that have been around for a while. I have all kinds of checks of like, has it patched? Has it? My engineers will go check, and they'll reboot it, make sure it comes up. And then now I rerun this play. All 1,000 nodes don't say the word, nothing in there. It says the word day. I know all the servers have rebooted. Now we can continue on. You'll be surprised how many times, you might not be surprised, but it surprised me how many times just little things were like busted, or like some little set of servers, I had logic that protected them, but it's okay to patch them on this night. So then we go through and we roll through the servers. There's so many things that can happen here. All right. So that's that one, and I said, what does this try and do? Did it work correctly? Boom. That's things for you guys to think about if you're doing your labs. Okay. So now you've decided to stamp information out to servers for 2 reasons. 1, you want the servers to know information about themselves, right? And 2, you want to know the state of the servers when certain actions have occurred. Okay. So we are over here, and we're going to go into this next part then, and we can clear all this up. Because again, most of these pieces are individual or independent of each other. But we're going to VI a patching.fact. And in there, we're just going to make this JSON or JSON, I don't care how you say it, JSON file. called patching.fact. And then we're going to push that. So facts push.yaml over to all the servers. So in my environment, patching facts push goes to servers, which are in a host group, in a host file. And then we're going to create a facts directory in case it isn't there. So that's got to be pushed to those servers and made. And then we're going to push the prod patch. This actually, I need to fix that because it's not the prod patching one in this one anymore. It's actually just patching fact. Let's go fix that. Just patching fact. Control S, save it, and that'll be gone. Oops. And then escape : WQ. So that should go properly to those. Let's run it right here. It's going to run. We're going to create that fact directory on all the nodes and push over that prod patching. Also, just for fun, some of you might notice that it had to create the directory and it had to push the file. If you run it again, this is idempotency, it doesn't need to make any changes anymore. Look at it right there. Boom. Doesn't have to make any changes. Didn't have to push anything because it's there. And then we'll go look on the servers. Did it successfully run? Yes. Can we check the server now? We've pushed that file over, but how is it going to be ingested back to Ansible? So we're going to go look at the Ansible_local. That's the special directory, the special pathing for that information that's been patched to or pushed to these servers, which is patching information. Okay. So there we go. Do you see that servers know information about themselves? Yes. Have you stamped that information in their etc facts anything.fact file, right? Did that show up? Huh. Apparently that's hidden. Maybe I didn't understand Markdown very well. I guess I've never tried to do that before, but that did not show up over here. Maybe I should just put an asterisk. Razless AZ. I don't know what's going on with you, but hopefully figure it out. All right, let's look at a stamp. Now we're going to stamp some information. So we need to stamp information to the server about the state of server when something occurred. So we're going to make a Jinja file, a template, if you will. That's exactly what they are. That's going to be stamped to the server. So we'll vi stamp.j2, right? And then we're going to go grab all this. We're going to go drop it in there. So we're going to paste in the information that we want. Now for this one to work, so cat stamp j2, for this one to work, we need to have these files from the earlier part of the lab. If that file, the patching wasn't there, rebooting and patch group wouldn't exist. So we had to go back when we were doing this earlier and re-push those. But for now, since we're doing the lab in one run, we're going to see it all. So now we're going to vi our stamp.yaml. And in here, we're going to go and just do a simple template module, which will push over that stamp. And it will timestamp it for us to exactly where it's going to go. All right. I don't know what's going on here. There we go. All right. I don't know what was going on with that guy. All right. We're going to execute this. Oh, whoops. We're not going to do that yet. We're just going to hit U here and undo this. All right. We'll paste that back in there. Boom. And then we're going to hit escape : WQ. And we're going to run this on the node to see it stamp on all the machines. Okay. So it's going to stamp over there. We're going to see it copy the template. But here's the thing. Does this one ever not copy the template? Because if you look at the file again, this one's a little important. Let's cat out the stamp.yaml. This will always be a unique date. This is always rolling forward as far as dates go. So this is ISO 8601 basic short, which is down to the second. This is always going to be a new date. So this will always keep stamping. That's important to know, because you're not overwriting the stamp. You're always time stamping it. And now if we go look at it, we see just one value. And then this is what was dumped into the server, we see that it was set to reboot true. So if we needed to defend ourselves later and say, well, my patching groups were or were not set to true at that time in that server, I would know. Was my server set when some patching went over the top of it to read out the patching fact and see that the server was set to true or not at that point? Because that file could have changed by now. Anything could have changed between here and there. So there we go. All right. So that's done. All right, validation successful. We did all of our lab. Now I'm going to take this. I always take these and I drop them in our Discord. And I say up in our Killer Coda labs, I say lab 7 or lab 5 now of automation is ready for testing. Because I want the guys to go test them as well, right? I want the guys to go work through those things and get better at these kind of things or whatever. Let's remove all the embeds of that. Okay. I don't know what's going on there. Oh, what the hell is going on there? All right. So anyways, that's pretty much all I'm probably going to get done. Man, that took me almost... So look, that and my video gaming took me almost 3 hours today. But I'm getting caught up on things that I needed to do anyways. So that's good. So, all right, guys, I will probably call it here. We can see, I guess we can see if there's anybody to raid over on the Twitch side of things, but I don't know if I see anybody doing tech stuff. No, I don't see anybody doing tech stuff, so we won't bother raiding anybody. But I definitely appreciate you guys coming. We will keep working on this stuff and keep getting this stuff going. And I will see some of you guys later on in the week. I will be around all this week. I'm going to be working on my dissertation stuff as well. But I definitely appreciate you guys coming. I will see some of you guys later on.